Welcome to the Telltale Cake, where we tell tales with cake and we try to ignore the corpses under the floorboards. With me today is my dear friend Dea. She is a dancer, an artist, a crafter, cat guardian, and all-around nerd. Dea, how are you doing today?
I am actually doing great. I got to play with my kitten over the weekend.
Yay! Are you crafting anything today?
Yes, I have octopuses.
Ooh, now I understand that your octopi have gained a certain amount of notoriety at some recent conventions.
Yes, they have basically overtaken Jordan Con. Every year I make them, and I don't make enough. I made 61 this year. It wasn't enough for people. Octopus.
Octopus.
It's my octopus baby.
It's beautiful.
I'm making more of them. They're in my bag.
Wonderful. So tell me, what are we reading today and why are we reading it?
We're reading Watership Down because apparently I wasn't traumatized enough the first time I read it. And they said, Pop Sugar said, read something with a bunny on the cover. Mine has lots of bunnies on the cover. So, achievement unlocked.
I have a copy from my local library and it only has one bunny on the cover, so it's clearly inferior.
Yeah, mine has like 8 or 9 or something, so lots of bunnies. I like bunnies.
More bunnies, the better. What is your relationship with bunnies?
I really like bunnies. I currently have 2 bunnies living in my backyard. And unfortunately, Paul has seen both, and I've only seen the older one. I have not yet seen the baby bunny. But I had a bunny when I was a kid twice, and I liked my bunnies. They were very soft and very friendly.
I have never had bunnies. My experience with bunnies is occasionally having to take baby bunnies away from a cat. Also, when they are available on the menu, I find them tasty.
Bunnies are part of my I don't eat things I have had or want to have as pets rule. If I've had it as a pet, if I want to have it as a pet, I don't eat it. Hence, I don't eat rabbits, I don't eat turtle, and I don't eat goat. If they had capybara or otter on the menu, I also would not eat that.
I respect that. So this book was published back in 1972. It won multiple awards, like the Carnegie and Guardian medals. It was written, well, it originally wasn't written. It was an oral saga of tales about bunnies that Richard Adams was telling to his daughters on long car trips.
Yeah, and that part confuses me because why would you tell this story to your children on car trips?
Or to children ever.
In general, yes. I think maybe the cartoon version is okay-ish. I did find out it has apparently been banned in some school districts because it's too violent. And to speak to that, Paul does not have it in his elementary school library. So there you go.
And Paul, of course, is your husband, who is a children's librarian in an elementary school.
Yes.
I'm actually not super mad about not having this in elementary school libraries. I read this as a child. I remember not liking it. I liked it much better on a reread, but I think that's just because I am now okay with horror movies and horror novels, which I was not as a child. I could not read Goosebumps. That was too much.
I was basically raised with horror. It's like I saw Alien in the theater when I was like 5, so, you know.
Terrifying.
I'm pretty sure we saw a rerun of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, but
I was not good with horror as a child. I was a very anxious child. I did not like horror.
My family has a weird relationship with horror.
Now I like it. Then I did not. The author has also said multiple times that this is not an allegory for anything. And I believe that. I also believe that because of how he anthropomorphizes the rabbits and their journey, it is easy to read human situations into it and find interesting parallels between human relationships and society and various bad societies in this novel.
Yeah, there's some pretty bad societies in this novel.
Multiple of them, in fact.
Traumatic ones. Very traumatic.
Now, we're on this podcast channel thing, whatever it is, we eat cake with our books. So today...
We eat books?
Sure. We devour books and we also devour cake. So for today's cake, I made a flourless chocolate cake because you don't do wheat flour and I'm really bad at gluten-free flours. So I just avoided the issue with not using any flour and got a rabbit-shaped mold, which was actually kind of difficult to use because some parts of the mold are deeper than others.
Yeah, and it's hard to get it to
Yes.
bake correctly.
That's all to say this may not be baked evenly. Like the ears might be a little overdone while the body is a little underdone. It's covered with a ganache that contains Irish cream just because I was out of regular cream and really liked it. Now, because you're a guest, well, you've had bunnies. Would you like me to cut off the head for you?
Sure, why not?
Perfect. We will start with violence because we choose violence on this show.
It is appropriate for the book. I don't think we have any head chopping, but there's enough other options.
There's so much violence in
Well,
this
it
novel.
would be very effective to shoot the cake, so cutting off the head's probably a good. Actually, I don't usually have a cake stare at me.
I recommend you eat the eyeball quickly. Otherwise, it'll become like in the Telltale Heart, where the eye just stares at you, and it drives you crazy, and then you have to do some murdering.
I probably shouldn't be poking it with the fork. Whatever.
Should you not?
Reminds me of...
You can poke at cakes with forks. In fact, I feel like that's a very appropriate thing to use it for.
Eyeball gone now. I am made very uncomfortable by the references to 1972 as if it's like ancient. I was born in 73, okay? It's not. Though Paul said the book, he thought the book read more like something written in like 1950 or something, which I have to agree. It's written old style.
I would tend to agree with that. It feels old.
You make a good cake. I think
you.
I've said that before.
You are definitely a person who has forced me to expand my baking horizons with unconventional flours or lack of flours. And I appreciate the challenge, but the struggle is real.
Imagine being the one who has to eat like that. Mm-hmm. Good thing is flourless chocolate cakes tend to be very forgiving, so that's a good one.
Let's judge this book by its cover. This cover is kind of disappointing. It's a rabbit.
I mean, it looks like a library book, though. An old library book.
It is, in fact, an old library book.
This edition was chosen basically for the cover because I'm a graphic designer and I've often thought I wish I could design book covers, but that's a much more competitive field and that's a mess. So I'll just go with working at a printing company. But I love it. Bunnies, lots of bunnies, and a 50th anniversary seal, which seems appropriate.
I like that cover much better. I still have a criticism, which is I feel like it should sort of convey some of the horror in this novel. Like, they should be more threatened bunnies somehow.
I mean, this bunny doesn't have a head. This is a half bunny. It's only the back half of a bunny. And this one down here is only a head. So,
Objection withdrawn.
there you go.
Let's get into it. So, as we might have gathered, all of our characters are rabbits.
Almost all our characters are rabbits.
Most of our characters are rabbits. They are kind of anthropomorphized, but they also have their own society with their own rules and their own rich cosmology and religion. There's this really interesting thing I like that goes through the book, which is the tales of El Arira.
El Ra, El something, Ra. I don't know. He said some of the bunny words were Arabic inspired, so that would make sense for El something.
Anyway, the big bunny in the sky. Bunny god. Bunny.
No, Frith is the bunny god. He's the son, the bunny god. He's the first bunny, I think.
And then El...
The progenitor of all of them. So,
and then
El whatever his name.
Yeah, El whatever is more of a, like, Anansi trickster god sort of
Yes.
thing.
First bunny trickster.
So there's a lot of stories about El meeting these various people and outwitting various people. He especially outwits Prince Rainbow a lot, which makes me kind of imagine Prince Rainbow as Elmer Fudd, but that's because I grew up with Looney Tunes.
Same. Yeah, I did think it was funny in the one where he's talking about, like, one of his bunny followers snuck into the palace, the king's palace, by describing himself as one of the children. And I'm wondering what world we're living in where a bunny and a child are, like, basically with a bit of work and cutting all your fur short, indistinguishable. Because I've seen bunnies and I've seen children, and I can tell the difference.
You also have poor eyesight, though. What if you didn't have any...
But I've got vision correction.
What if you didn't?
Well, then they would all be big blurs and still be different sizes.
Well, some children, human children, are very small, and some bunnies are very big.
Okay, I've seen one bunny that was like this big. But even then, it's kind of like this way, and a child is this way.
That's fair.
So
What if the child is pre-walking?
okay, there you go. It's a crawl. Is it a crawling bunny or is it a crawling child? Don't touch it to find out it's furry, and you'll probably be fine. And cover the ears.
That's a good point. So it is vaguely possible that you could be fooled by a bunny trying to be a child.
If I didn't touch anything, didn't look closely, didn't get closely, didn't notice they're moving a different way, sure, let's be fooled.
What if it was dark?
Wait, I think they went outside in the garden to play during the day, though.
You have a point. Fine.
It's still, there's a reason it's mythology.
Okay, we'll waive the point.
I mean, Zeus, swan, shower of gold, okay, whatever. It's mythology.
Can we not talk about the shower of gold? Like, let's just not go there.
I mean, we're still going into the patriarchy and misogyny anyway, so.
Yep. But still. So we start at this nice bunny warren, and we meet our main bunnies, Hazel and Fiver. And Fiver is a small bunny, and he's named Fiver because rabbits can only count to 4, and he was sort of the extra one after the 4 bunnies were born, and now he's the runt. But he's a magical runt, so he has weird visions that are always correct. And one of his weird visions is that there's a really doomy doom coming to this warren, and it's very much upsetting him.
If I were Fiver, I'd just be glad I wasn't having actual visions of the doomy doom, because as we find out later, it was a very bad doomy doom.
It was pretty horrifying. Fiver does manage to convince his friend Hazel and some other rabbits in the warren that the doomy doom is real and they should leave. So a small group of the rabbits heads out to find a new warren and avoid the unspecified doomy doom. So they go through the night, and it's actually quite a scary trek. They first have to defeat one of the rabbits from the old warren who was trying to stop them.
Several of them, actually. There was
Holly and a few others. All right, so we're traveling. There's
Cthulhu was fabulous.
Cthulhu, the mug. I drink out of small, dainty demi-tasse cups because I drink it black.
You can be dainty when you want to be.
I can be dainty when I want to be.
You can also be very fierce when you want to be.
And that's what Cthulhu is for. I have all the coffee drinking options. So they flee from various animals, and there's an interesting moment where they figure out how to cross a stream. Pipkin, who is the smallest rabbit that goes with them, can't swim the stream. There's a dog on one side. It's like, do we abandon Pipkin and leave him to die? Yeah. Rabbits.
Well, they probably would have had to abandon Fiver, too, because he's pretty tiny.
But one of the rabbits is with them is quite the smart rabbit, Blackberry. And he figures out that wood floats. And we avoid the Monty Python monologue about this that we're both
That's in my head.
I knew it, because it's in mine as well. But he knows that wood floats, so he gets the 2 littlest bunnies onto the wood, and then the rest sort of push it over to the opposite bank. And this is foreshadowing.
Bigwig pushes across the opposite bank, which is cool because Bigwig's the big one who originally took him to meet the chief. So, you think he'd be the big, bossy, pushy one. But no, he pushes the little tiny rabbits across the stream.
He's only pushy in a helpful way.
Yes. Literally pushy, actually.
Right. Things start to get better. After a little bit of journeying, they're tired, they're hungry. They find this nice but half-empty warren, and all the rabbits are big and well-fed and super friendly. So they can just move into this warren, and everyone is happy, except Fiver.
But everything's going to be wonderful because it's a nice big warren with friendly rabbits. What could possibly go wrong?
Absolutely nothing. Fiver has premonitions of doom, but nobody is listening to him. So he doesn't want to sleep in this warren. He goes and sleeps elsewhere. Meanwhile, the other rabbits are trying to adapt and learn about the warren and its ways, but they're having trouble assimilating. There's some weird stuff going on in this warren. It's very much a faux pas to ask where anything is, and these rabbits don't like tales of the outside world and heroism. What these rabbits are doing is creating art. They're putting stones together in different colors and making mosaics.
Well, we don't know if they're different colors because we don't know how well they would have seen them, but there's definitely, you can feel them. They said you can put your little paws out there and feel them, and there's little bunny art. I like the idea of bunny art.
The book is not into the idea of bunny art.
Well, it's because it's not a very bunny thing to do, admittedly.
True. In fact, this is sort of an evidence of how terrible this warren is. So we find out, after Bigwig nearly gets caught in a snare, that the reason that all the rabbits are well-fed and happy in this warren and never ask where anything is.
Of course they're happy. No one's unhappy at all.
Totally. And, you know, they never question where anything is. In fact, there's this one scene where it's like, where one of the rabbits from the warren calls out to his friend and his friend doesn't answer. And he's like, oh, he's probably in there. He was in there the other day. And there's no footprints. It's very creepy. But back to what I was saying. Bigwig gets caught in a snare. Unfortunately, he knows how to get out of a snare and tells the other rabbits how to free him, so he doesn't die, though he does get an interesting scar. And it turns out that there's a nearby farmer who has been farming these rabbits. So he sees the rabbit warren, he decides, oh, I'll just make this part of my farm. So he feeds the rabbits a whole lot of vegetables, just whatever's left over from the garden, which keeps them big and happy and healthy. He keeps their natural predators away, and then he just kind of kills and eats some of them periodically.
And harvests their skins.
Yes.
Because that's not creepy.
Not at all. And the rabbits at this warren, they all kind of know this is going on. They don't talk about it. They don't ask where anyone might be. They don't mention anyone they haven't seen in a while. They just sort of drop it. They sit around and make art. And I kind of wanted to ask you about this as an artist. How do you feel about what this book is kind of saying about just sitting around and making art and not worrying about your safety?
Well, you can see even in ancient times that people made art. I mean, we have cave paintings, and not all of them are informative. We know this because some of them are like way down where it's dark and they wouldn't have had any light, but they made them anyway. So if they were intended to be for, you know, in purposes of information or whatever, they would have been where people would have seen them. We do see some of those. They're around, you know, on the outsides and stuff. I've actually seen some of the ones they have out in Colorado, which are very cool. Ooh. But so it's been an impulse for humans all along. But having the ability to devote time to it is very much a thing of privilege. Like, even aside from the fact that, you know, you have to have time and the mental health, which isn't being constantly under pressure from all the existential dread and how do I eat, how do I sleep, where am I going to be tomorrow, and is something giant going to come and kill me. There is the thing that, you know, you have to invest resources in getting the materials. So you can see how even for people it is a bit of a privilege. But from the standpoint of the rabbits, I mean, it's not something that your normal rabbit would ever think of to just make something for decorative purposes, especially not underground in the warren where they wouldn't exactly see it. They could kind of feel it. And that would be the best. But it's definitely something that would be very, very unnatural for something that's like constantly under pressure of not being eaten by everything basically in the world that wants to eat you. So it's just like a really weird thing that really stands out, just like the singing to the babies, which they also did.
Oh, that's
which
true.
I think is adorable.
Yes. Although they do have stories. Rabbits are storytellers, which is in itself, I'd say, an art form.
Yes.
So this is specifically, they have a thing about creating art that with resources and stones and things. Anyway, they found the snare, they found out what's going on, so they decide to flee. Again, one of the rabbits from the warren comes along. because he's decided that he no longer feels like trading his safety to make art, which I can see. And they go out again on a journey.
Well, he has a very specific reason for being willing to throw it all over. Because
Yes. His doe, his mate, was snared.
And it seems like in his case, they even make a point of how attached the two of them seem to each other, which they mention it as if it's something very unusual. So,
And we'll see some of the other relationships between does and bucks that it is, in fact, a very unusual relationship. They do not have healthy gender relations here.
they do not.
We'll get to there, although I'm going to mention that a couple of times because these are stories that were told to some daughters.
Yeah, these were written for daughters. Why did we have to make bunnies misogynist?
They're bunnies.
Do we really need a bunny patriarchy? No.
No.
You would think that a matriarchy would make more sense for something like a bunny. Because
But no.
they have a lot of babies, but you're definitely going to know who the mom is.
We have left the warren along with our new bunny, and we meet we start heading out again, and we run into some old bunnies from the old warren, Captain Holly, and the bunny who went with him.
Bluebell is the
Yes.
other one we meet.
Holly tells this awful story of what happened to the original warren. There was construction, and humans decided to deal with the rabbit warren with poison gas.
And brutality.
And the rabbits that ran out of the warren to
And shooting.
escape the gas, there were guns, there were dogs. Again, Richard Adams has said multiple times this is not an allegory for anything. There are people who have read it as an allegory for the Holocaust because I think of this scene, which is also why I don't know that it's the most appropriate thing to have around in elementary school libraries.
Yeah, I'm really glad my husband doesn't have it in his library because if you know what? If a 9-year-old wants to read this book, it is still available at the public library.
My librarian friend has said that her summer reading group of teenagers wanted to read Watership Down and then watch the movie Watership Down and discuss it. And she sat down with them and had a discussion about how it's not just about bunnies and are they really okay with this?
Are you okay with animal slaughter in detail?
Really horrifying animal slaughter in detail. And everyone said they were okay with it. I think there were some tears, but everyone was warned. Which is, again, why I think the cover art should be less just bunnies and more indicative of how horrific this is. Because if you just pick it up thinking it's about bunnies, you might be in for a surprise. I'm not saying you shouldn't read it, but you should know what it is. So we hear that horrible story. We're all feeling a bit upset. If you're me, we've taken a break from reading it for a bit to have some tea. Maybe go do something else for a bit. Because it's not a good scene.
Yeah, I read it over a period of time interspersed with books I was reading for the school stuff. So
They go on, and then we actually get a nice break in horror for a bit. They find a good place up on top of this place called Watership Down. For some reason, downs are uplands, which I feel like is a little counterintuitive that we call them downs.
I have never looked in the etymology of the word, but you're right, that is pretty weird.
I should look up the etymology of that. It is very weird. So they're up on the down, and they start digging a warren, and this is sort of a new thing for bunnies because normally only the bunny females dig. But they're a bunch of bugs, so they've decided they can't.
Yes, and they sometimes they're like, oh, well, they'll scratch out a little bit and they'll help the doe dig their nest, and that's it.
But they've learned they can actually dig, and they're finding it satisfying. They're building a nice big warren. And they also do some other new things for bunnies, which is they start befriending some non-bunny animals. It starts with a mouse that they help escape from a kestrel. They're not as worried about the kestrel because kestrels aren't quite big enough to deal with adult bunnies.
Right. And the little bitty babies stay
Mm-hmm.
in the warren.
Whereas a kestrel can perfectly well kill a mouse and will be very happy to do so. So they just help a mouse escape, and the mouse is basically like, well, I'll remember this, I'll do you a favor later on. Most of the bunnies are like, whatever, why did we do this? But Hazel thinks that this will come in handy, which it does later.
Hazel's good at the strategic thinking, and Blackberry's good at the, figuring out how human type things work. Like, he's the one who figures out once, if you remember, he's the one who figured out how to get bigwigs out of the snare. They're like, peg, peg, and he's like, oh, here's what we do. We dig down and we bite through it. Nada. Ta-da.
Blackberry's really smart.
I like Blackberry. He's pretty cool. He's one of my favorites.
They also find a seagull, and the seagull's been hurt. So they basically start feeding the seagull because they think the seagull will help them later, which, as it turns out, is the case. Because Hazel, also with the long-term strategic thinking, has noticed this warren has a problem. They don't have any does. Because our author, in creating this misogynistic society, has not had any does that decided to be part of the adventuring group. And now all the bucks are going to have to figure out how to Sabine women some does from other places. Again, these are stories told to daughters.
Yes, to two daughters. It strikes me as funny that we get to, I think it's right about here in the book, before we figure out, oh, wait, we should have, it's almost halfway. And we're like, oh, wait, we need some girls. And it makes it even funnier because they've already figured out we have to make this entire thing ourselves because we don't have any girls. And they've already been in the other warren and saw babies and saw mated pairs. And still it somehow never occurred to them, we need girls.
Maybe we should have tried to get some to go with us. That didn't happen.
That would have been too rational.
Entirely. But they now have this seagull friend. And Hazel says, seagull friend, can you fly around and find me where, other rabbits might be? Because we're looking for some does. Which the seagull, in his, I guess, humorous accent, refers to as mutters, which I think is mothers.
I assume it would be. But it's cute.
Yeah, the seagull is going to help them find some mutters. And he finds two possible sources for them to steal does from. Again, this is told to daughters.
We'll just go steal some girls when we need them. That's fine.
I'm just going to keep bringing up that this is told to daughters. This is the stories that a man is choosing to tell to his young daughters, who are 10 and 12 at the time. Yeah.
I had wondered how old they were, so thank you for figuring that out.
I think that's what I read. I'll double check that. So there's two possible sources of does. One is this little farm that's close by that has a couple of rabbits in a hutch. The other is this big old warren that's a few days' journey. And they think about trying to spring some rabbits out of the hutches, but they're worried because hutch rabbits may not adapt well to wildlife, which is true. If you have domesticated animals and you are a terrible person who decides you're just not going to take care of them anymore, don't just release them into the wild. They cannot survive. Don't do that.
Rescue societies exist for a reason. We have the internet. Please go look it up.
I recently even managed to rehome a fish. And if I had not been able to rehome that fish, my options were to either get a 100-gallon aquarium or euthanasia, because there are some people who release foreign fish into local streams, and that's horrible. Because if they survive, they might become an invasive species. Don't do that.
And if you find yourself with teeny tiny little kittens and puppies, please don't abandon them, even if it's on the doorstep of a vet clinic. Please go into the clinic and say, I found these animals. Can you please find someone to hand raise them? I don't say this from personal experience. No, this is...
Not at all.
We're animal people here.
I recently rescued a kitten because her people couldn't take care of her anymore due to medical stuff.
Yes, and it's just by a miracle and my brother-in-law's very hard work that I have a kitten who's just over a year old because he was abandoned on the doorstep of the veterinary clinic at 8 days old, which is totally what good people do with animals.
People are awful.
We didn't know we were going to be doing PSAs about animal welfare, did we?
No, we
But
did
there
not.
you go.
So, Hazel does not go out on the expedition to go to the other Warren. It's set up as an embassy to go say, hey, do you have any basically spare does that might want to move out? We've got a home for them.
You seem to be implying that they're going to ask the girls if they would like to go along instead of just saying, oh, here, take these. Because the implication is very much that it's just like, have some of our women, not, are there any women who would like to go join this group? No. As we're telling these girls.
Meanwhile, Hazel is sitting around feeling like he wants to go on an adventure too. And so he decides that he is going to go sneak off with some and free some of the hutch rabbits, even though Fiver tells him that this is a bad idea. But somehow we have not figured out that listening to Fiver is probably something you should do by now. So he goes out and he actually does manage to spring a few of the hutch rabbits, but he also runs into the farm dog and some men with guns, and he gets away with some buckshot in his leg. Though, fortunately, Seagull Friend knows about buckshot and knows that you have to dig the projectile out.
Yay for Seagull Friend.
Seagull Friend is very helpful. So we get some hutch rabbits, and Hazel is now with a limp. So it wasn't that great. But it's better than what happened with the embassy, which comes back and without any girls. And with this awful tale of the police state fascist war in Ephrafa. The rest of the book is going to be about Ephrafa, the police state fascist war run by the giant police state fascist bunny.
In a children's book.
In a children's book. In stories told to children. So there's this warren that is run by General Woundwort, who is just this gigantic bunny who rules with an iron paw and through fear. He's got not only his police bunnies, which is sort of normal apparently, but he's got secret police bunnies and a council. And bunnies are organized into various divisions. They're marked with bite marks on different parts of them. They all have strict schedules for when they can feed. Otherwise, they have to be underground. They're all strictly controlled and counted, and they're not allowed to leave. So when our fearless bunny embassy got there, they were basically assimilated into the warren and had to escape, barely got away. So Hazel sits down and thinks about this because we only have, one doe, and he's worried that the bucks will fight over the one doe and mating with her.
And she has sort of a partner already who came from the hutch that she was in, because there was one hutch, I think, with two and one with two. So I think she was part of a mated pair.
Yep.
So
Hazel is going to come up with a cunning plan to spring some does out of Ephrafa. So he takes a big party down, and they are going to accomplish this with cunning and trickery. So they send Bigwig in to join Ephrafa and get promoted to the police because he's really big, and gather some does and bust out.
And it's what he did back in the original Warren, whose name I don't remember.
Sandalford,
that's it. Yeah, he was part of the Ausla there.
The Ausla is
he and Silver.
Yeah. The Ausla is Richard Adams' name for the bunny council that's under the chief rabbit, and they can act as police, but they're basically the head bunnies. Because this is a very hierarchical society.
Surprisingly so, a special Ephrafa. That one's
very. I mean, that's
crazy hierarchical. It's weirdly hierarchical.
Yeah. So that goes as planned. Bigwig goes in and finds some does that are discontented. He is able to communicate with them by using his position in the Ausla to just send for a doe to mate with because that's a thing that he can do in a children's book.
Written for girls.
Written for young girls.
Tween girls.
Yeah. So
tween wasn't a term then. It was basically just child, teen. So they would have been children.
Yeah.
Children.
This is a children's book. This is not a children's book. All right. So Bigwig is making contact with various does that might escape with him. So there's actually a moment of consent. These are does.
That's what I was about to say. I applaud Bigwig for this whole consent thing of finding female rabbits who want to join them.
He's increasing his stock as a good guy by he also wants to rescue this one rabbit that tried to escape, was mutilated, and is being shown off as an example to the other rabbits of what happens when you try to escape. And Bigwig is just taking pity on this one rabbit and wants to bring him with him.
Bigwig's actually a surprisingly good guy for someone who could have been an owl slut because he also never tries to take leadership from Hazel.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I like Bigwig.
Bigwig's cool. I'm glad he didn't die.
Me
Though
too.
he's probably the only one who could have been caught in that snare and actually have survived it. I don't think even Silver would have survived that.
Probably not. Now we get Seagull Friend. When Bigwig is out feeding and with all the does, he gets a Seagull Friend to attack the rabbits while he and the does basically make a break for it, along with our poor mutilated bunny. And this works okay, but Woundwort is close behind. There's all the large bunnies of Ephrafa are in pursuit. But remember, foreshadowing, when we found out that wood floats, Blackberry and Hazel have found a boat. And with some help with the conceptual leap from Seagull Friend, they understand that if they get in the boat and then they chew through the rope, the boat will move. So that's what they do. They get all the escapees into the boat, chew through the rope, and escape downriver, which is just shocking to the bunnies from Ephrafa.
Though chewing through the peg and then chewing through the rope is extremely accurate, having had rabbits. That is basically what they do to everything, is you give them something, they chew through it.
Yep, chewing. It's what rabbits do.
And then chewing some more, and then some more.
So only get rabbits if you can deal with the chewing. Only get any pet if you can deal with the pet.
Yeah, make sure you know what you're getting into. And if you're getting like a purebred cat or dog, please go to a rescue first. And second, make sure you know how big your pet's going to be and if they have any serious health concerns you should know about.
This has been a PSA on responsible pet ownership.
You'll get a lot of those from us.
So they get back to their own warren up on Watership Down with all the does, and they think everything is great. They're all happy. It succeeded. They've got does now. The issues of consent sort of are never talked about again. They have does, so it's all good. Clover, one of the does they rescued from the hutch, has baby rabbits, so the warren's all healthy. But wait. Back in Ephrafa, General Woundwort just cannot let this go. He does not lose. He is not a rabbit that loses. And so he sends out patrols to find where these rabbits went and to go kill them and recapture them. And they succeed. They find out where the rabbits are up on Watership Down. And the only thing that really saves our rabbit protagonists is the mouse that they helped escape the kestrel actually warns them. So
Yay, mousy friend.
Yay, mousy friend. So Hazel has a plan. He goes off to find a Deus Ex Machina and leaves Bigwig to guard the warren. So then we have a large bloody battle of the attacking forces trying to break into the warren. Final giant showdown between General Woundwort and Bigwig. Woundwort is bigger than Bigwig, and apparently when rabbits fight, whichever one is bigger, which I don't know anything about rabbits, it does not seem unreasonable.
They have very powerful hind legs with good claws on them.
I don't necessarily want to get into a fight with a rabbit. There's this interesting moment.
I have a scar from one. I scared my rabbit when I picked her up, and she got me with her back claws. Kelly was a good bunny. It wasn't her fault.
Sometimes when you scare animals, they lash out, and that's not their fault.
Which is the same thing that happened with my snake.
Aw.
Wasn't her fault. Somebody dropped her. I caught her. But, I mean, she caught me, too.
She was scared. I'm not mad at the snake.
You're a snake. You have two things you can do. Grab with the teeth, wrap with the body. She did both.
If she was falling, I understand it. If I am falling, I grab with everything I have. At anything.
I'm glad she didn't fall. She's free to bite me.
Yeah.
To not fall.
I've heard that most of the time snake bites aren't even bad.
Bad, no. Painful, yes.
Okay.
It does hurt, especially since I got bit in the middle of my palm.
Ow. Anyway, there's an interesting moment where Woundwort asks Bigwig, why are you going to all this effort to defend the warren? Why don't you just give up? And Bigwig replies, because my chief rabbit told me to. And this just absolutely blows Woundwort's mind, because he thinks that if Bigwig is not the chief rabbit, there is a larger rabbit somewhere else, because he cannot conceive of authority being held on any other basis than strength. So this scares him a little. So he retreats to the surface, which is when he runs into Hazel's Deus Ex Machina, by which we mean the dog from the neighboring farm that Hazel and a few of his other rabbit lieutenants have gone out and freed and gotten to chase them up to the top of the down. And the dog is just maddened by rabbits at this point, so he hits Woundwort and basically kills Woundwort. And this makes Ephrafa lose their fighting spirit, and they all leave and kind of stop being a problem. And then Watership Down continues to be this happy rabbit warren. Everyone grows old and is happy, and when Hazel dies, he receives a vision from El and gets posthumously inducted into El's Ausla, so he gets to be a magic rabbit in the afterlife.
Which I love that he's created by a rabbit with a glowing light, isn't it, in the ears?
I think so.
Instead of the eyes, it's the ears. Glowing ears. I love that.
Honestly, the El Arira stories are my favorite part of this book.
They are really fun. And I love that there's just one story where he doesn't win because he can't trick death.
Which is fair. You really cannot trick death.
Yeah.
So that's the book. Not a children's book. It is now time to rate it on my sugar scale, which doesn't have real units. The S stands for sexiness, which they do have sex in this book. They talk about mating, but it's very utilitarian, and there's not really a lot of consent.
We never know about it either. It just has happened because a doe has babies, and that's how you know it's happened. So I think he should get points for not having actual sex in his book for small children.
I mean, that if he had...
He had to get it right on one point, right?
Yeah. So it's not sexy, and that's probably a good thing.
It's a children's book. Let's have it not be sexy.
Yeah. It's not a children's book.
It was supposed to be a children's book. Good job on not having sex in the book that's supposed to be for small children.
Good job on nothing else on a book that's supposed to be for children.
There are some likable characters.
Yes. Uniqueness is what the U stands for. And, okay, it's a book about talking animals. It's not the first book about talking animals. We've already got things like The Secret of Nim. We've got Stuart Little. I think there was one or two others that I definitely wrote down.
Did you find the part, I think it was in the introduction where he wrote about how he chose to portray the animals and what their capabilities are, physical capabilities inspired by Rudyard Kipling's Jungle Book.
Oh, I skipped that part.
Yeah. So he said that he took that same route where while he personified the bunnies and their thinking and their personality and their society and all that stuff, that he did stick with bunnies can't do things bunnies can't do. So I thought that was interesting. I thought it was even funnier because I've never actually read Jungle Book, so I've only seen the Jungle Book animated, which is basically the opposite of that.
Yeah, I've read the Jungle Book. I like all the animal stories. I don't like where the man-child is supposed to go be a man, and how the tiger is evil, which, I mean, I guess from the perspective of a lot of animals who are being eaten by tigers. It's not the best.
No, tigers are probably kind of jerks.
A lot of cats are kind of jerks when it comes to that, but they're such
That
cute,
too.
cuddly jerks.
Tigers are friend-shaped, but probably not very friendly.
Probably not. So it's not the most unique thing. I will say it's probably the most unique in terms of using animals to explore horrific human societies.
Which is probably unintentional. Especially the part where we get this leader from who's created the society where he just absolutely cannot conceive of he may be wrong and that can't conceive of a society where they're saying bad things about him, and that's the most horrifying thing he can imagine, which I don't know if we can relate to that with any political leaders.
Not at all. There are other books about talking animals that I would recommend more for children. Wind in the Willows is...
Not for children. Not for children.
Yeah. The Rats of Nim, or Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim, rather, which even though that scared me as a child, most things scared me as a child. The Redwall series, though beyond the first four, they're all kind of the same.
Yeah, I liked Wind of the Willows. That was a good one.
I like Wind in the Willows.
But it's happy. Beatrix Potter. There's
Yes!
Beatrix Potter. And you even get some of the trickiness. I mean, that's Trickster. You get that with Beatrix Potter, too. So that's for the little bitty kids, really.
This is not for children.
Not for children.
Seriously.
We can't stress that enough. This is not for children.
Gender is what the G stands for. I have a passage that I would like to read. This is after Hazel has stolen 2 does from the hutch. Well, said Holly, you say it was only a lark, Hazel, but at least it gave us 2 does, and they're the only 2 we've got. Are they any good? The kind of ideas that have become natural to many male human beings in thinking of females, ideas of protection, fidelity, romantic love, and so on, are, of course, unknown to rabbits, although rabbits certainly do form exclusive attachments, much more frequently than most people realize. However, they are not romantic, and it came naturally to Hazel and Holly to consider the 2 nut-hanger does simply as breeding stock for the warren. So there you have it. Little girls that we're telling this story to. You should be grateful to civilization because otherwise men will just treat you like livestock.
Are you saying that there aren't a fair number of men out there who just treat women like livestock anyway?
There are. But there's so many things in that statement. I mean, first of all, this whole bit about what is civilization and why do you think it's opposed to misogyny? Because there are a number of hunter-gatherer societies that are much less misogynistic than would be implied by that statement. And there are a number of more so-called civilized societies that have these ideas of romantic courtly love that do kind of treat women as livestock. Sometimes with prettier words than that, if you're lucky, with prettier words than that. I think we both just watched Shiny Happy People,
Yes.
in which our highly civilized society is really treating women like livestock.
Yes, make as many does as possible.
Yes.
And if they're boy does, they can go fight battles. And if they're little girl does, then, use them to make more of them. That's what you're good for.
Yes.
I have issues with this viewpoint.
And again, this is for children.
A story told to his daughters. Children, little girls.
This is a man who chose to say things like that to his little daughters.
It's one thing to say, okay, when he told the story, his daughters wanted him to make up a long story for a long car ride that they had never heard before. So, okay, you make one up on the spot. It may have problems and rough edges and stuff, but, then he went back and he turned it into this book, which means he decided it was a good idea.
I recently saw a musical at the Alliance Theater, Darlin' Corey, and there was this great song that I may put a clip of in here, Ain't You Got a Daughter? And it's just like, how do you raise daughters? What are you telling to your daughters? And I kept thinking of that. Like, this is told to your daughters. What are you doing?
In my case, I was told that there's nothing normal about female math geniuses. So, we're not supposed to be good at math, apparently.
Well, I was told that men wouldn't like me if I was too smart.
Oh, I heard that one too. Fortunately, it was wrong.
We have feelings.
We have feelings. We have big feelings on the patriarchy and misogyny.
You're making up a story. Your rabbits can be anything you imagine, and you imagine them being this misogynistic. Really?
At the very core of their being completely, utterly, and totally misogynistic. Like, they comment when they're visiting, and unfortunately I cannot pronounce Strawberry's doe's name. His mate, I can't pronounce her name because it's very complicated and I can't remember it. Strawberry, it's my favorite fruit. I can remember that. They comment with surprise that he seems very fond of her. And it's since her death, she got caught in the wires. That's all he says when they're like, why did you want to leave after all this time? They say, where's your mate? And he says, the wires. And that's understood to be she was the other one who got caught about the same time as Bigwig, and that's why he wanted to leave. So it's implied that Strawberry had a strong attachment and really cared about his mate. So yay for Strawberry. I'm pro-Strawberry, Team Strawberry.
I can be Team Strawberry.
He's also a good guy later on. He does lots of nice things. And he's nice to the mouse.
Yes.
He's nice to the mouse.
All right, so next in sugar is A, which stands for axiness, because Franz Kafka says that a book should be an axe for the frozen sea inside us.
Interesting.
And I like that quote quite a bit. So, and it's also one of those things that's hard to figure out exactly what he means by that.
Well, it is Kafka, so.
Yeah. So, does it make us feel big feelings? Does it make us think differently about the world? I do feel big feelings.
We have definitely felt some big feelings on this.
It did make me think about some different societies, particularly the Warren with the art. I had some feelings and thoughts about that, also because it sort of reminded me of how in H.P. Lovecraft stories, civilizations go through this period where they turn to art, and then it becomes decadent and decays. So I've been thinking about art and society, which I'm not really qualified to do. I need to read more.
I think about art and society a lot, but that's because I have an art degree after I...
You're much more qualified to have those thoughts than I am. But what about you? Did it make you think about anything in a new or different way?
Well, the last time I had read it, I was a little girl being told this story who really liked bunnies. So that's why I had it. I always wanted a bunny. I had a bunny later. Fortunately, it was a girl bunny. Actually, both the two bunnies I had were girl bunnies. I didn't breed them for fun. Instead, I cuddled with them and we played.
Aww.
And I gave her lots of good food. One of the things I really thought about was it's really like, it kind of gave me some of the Terry Pratchett feelings, except I don't think it was intentional, where it holds up a mirror to a lot of the things with society, and by seeing them in this completely unfamiliar context, you think about them and you start to recognize them in other places. And I think there was some of that, except, of course, when Terry Pratchett did it, he was very deliberate. He's talked about that. And yeah. Read Terry Pratchett.
He is also not subtle at all.
No, he's not subtle.
He will make sure
this was casual and not intended to be political commentary, but it very much is political commentary.
Yeah, I can actually kind of see it as a long story that you're telling to children. I mean, other than the misogyny, and you're telling it to daughters and the violence. It's like, oh, they get to this new Warren, and then it's sort of like this. And then they get to this other Warren, and it's kind of like this. The kind of Warrens he chose for young children.
Maybe not the best examples. You could maybe have toned it down a bit for children. Because, a lot of children get subjected to the full horrors of what's going on in our society. As it is, we don't need to be doing it just for fun.
Now, I don't know how old he was when he wrote this. I should look that up. But let's say he was, 30s, so he had children in his 20s. 30s to 40s. That means he would have been born in 1940 or sometime in the 30s. So World War II would have been very much a thing.
Yeah, that is a good point. I didn't think too far about it, except that his daughters would have been about a decade, maybe a little more older than me, is how I was kind of looking at it. So which means I figured that it probably meant that he was probably about a decade or so older than my parents. So yeah, you're right. That would have worked out about right.
Yeah, and World War II was kind of an interesting time for Britain because, of course, there was the bombing, the Blitz, and they caused a famine very deliberately in India. Yay. So
And we wonder why my Indian friends all have very mixed feelings about the British.
it's easy to have mixed feelings about the British.
It's easy to have mixed feelings about the Americans.
It's easy to have mixed feelings about everything.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bad things that people do. So finally, we get to readability, which is the R, which I think is where this is going to score the highest because it is quite engaging.
Yeah, it was really good. It has great characters. It's really, really good characters.
And there's not a lot of downtime because there's always something happening.
Yeah.
It's very fast-paced. There's a lot of characters that I at least cared about, even when they're being horribly misogynistic. And when things get too dark, we have these little breaks to tell El Arira stories, which are just fabulous.
Yeah, I liked it. And I really liked Fiver and Pipkin, And one of the things I thought that showed that what a good leader Hazel was is that from the very beginning, Hazel was like, well, we should try and get as many people out of Sandalford Warren as we can if something horrible is going to happen. I want everybody to be safe. But then he realizes that's a danger. But he makes sure to get Pipkin out, who is basically, and we kind of, this is something that kind of falls by the wayside in the book, but Hazel and Fiver actually have the same parent. Presumably the same doe, because who knows, they probably have different fathers, but they might even be from that same litter. But yeah, Hazel and Fiver are brothers, but Pipkin's like this little rabbit who they've taken in, and he's even smaller. Fiver's known for being this tiny little rabbit, but Pipkin's even smaller than Fiver, and Hazel goes out of his way all along to protect Pipkin and watch out for him and make sure he's good. And Pipkin seems to be a good little rabbit. He seems to be a good guy. He's probably not full grown at that point, like a teenager, young teens, probably both he and Fiver. But
they are rabbits that care about each other. I mean, not the does, but they care about each other.
Well, Fiver and Pipkin are too young for that to be an issue with them. So with them, you kind of skip over the whole thing. But I really liked having a mystic rabbit. I thought that was so cool.
Everyone should have a mystic rabbit. Your bunny pets, were they mystics?
I'm going to decide that they were.
Excellent.
They were very good bunnies. They were very pretty. Yeah. Kelly was my second bunny, and she was white and very large. She was supposed to be a miniature lop. I think that maybe she wasn't a miniature lop, or at least maybe her daddy wasn't a miniature lop, because she got rather big.
Well, we've reached the end. Is there anything you would like to tell our readers to do?
Be kind to bunnies. Don't be a misogynist. And be kind to bunnies. Be nice to bunnies.
Yeah, be nice to bunnies.
Don't put poison gas down their holes and give them poison food and shoot them and stuff. Be kind to them. If you know they're living in your yard, throw them some treats out there.
They're fine. They're just being bunnies. They're fine. I mean, what are you doing with your yard? It's not like you survive on food that you grow, more than likely.
Yeah.
I mean, statistically.
Besides, it'll keep your green waste out of the landfill. So there you go. Double purpose. Throw your waste out. Throw a little bit of veggie scraps out there. Feed the bunnies, or the possums, or the raccoons, whatever. They're hungry too.
Be kind to bunnies. All right. Thank you. Like and subscribe.